I don't do nothing fancy like Jay. So, but
Okay,
guys,
that's all right. That's all right.
we are live. Sorry about it being 9 minutes late, but like I said in the chat, we have great green room conversations, and maybe one day that will just become a subscriber only thing where you guys get to tune in a little bit early and hear those kind of conversations about what goes on there. I know Ty over at Around the Table Sports just talked about it, but I am joined today by Cooper. How are you doing today?
It's we talked about this a little bit with the Avalanche, and we're right in the middle of it, and I feel like even like the biggest tumbles haven't started yet. And we were talking a little bit in the green room, just starting to get excited for even like 25. So man, it's good to be a Sooner, and I think the next 30 days are going to be so cool.
It's going to be so cool. And I think if we're going to start talking about Oklahoma recruiting, I think there's only one place to start, and that's going to be with the 247 composite 5-star running back Taylor Tatum, who is announcing his commitment tomorrow. And all eyes point to the University of Oklahoma because today, Scott Schrader, the On3 USC insider, flipped his prediction from USC in favor of Oklahoma. And everybody's been kind of doing that over the past month and kind of slowed down a little bit. You kind of let Taylor Tatum regain control of his recruitment. I think a lot of people need to understand that sometimes these recruits have to wait a while to regain control because these insiders sometimes take it away. Taylor Tatum has now regained control, and it looks like he is going to be a Sooner. Cooper, what are your thoughts around Taylor Tatum and what Oklahoma could have at the running back position in 2024 as they head into the SEC?
Let's just start with this. Taylor Tatum excites me because again, you've got 5'10" and a half, 200 pounds. It never hurts. Even in this day and state, we see what's going on in the NFL with the running back position, and we are pitching a couple different things, which are great for him. Is we care about you and your long term. And that's one of Brent Venables and the entire coaching staffs, DeMarco Murray, Jeff Levy. That's their entire deal is that, it's not just the football. We want to care about you as a human being. And part of Taylor Tatum is a love for baseball. And then also, as a running back, you've got a situation where we are offering that, you don't have to come in here and be a 35 carry a game back. You throw back like Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin, and that guy was running the ball 40 times in certain games. And you saw his career come to a screeching halt, his last year in San Diego. And I'm a Broncos fan. So, we picked him up and there wasn't much great after that. So, but that seems to be a recurring motif with our team. So, but you've got power, you have speed, him matching up with X. And if somehow we can still get Durham, I mean, it's a great deal. It doesn't hurt either that Cody Thomas, hit his first big league home run yesterday for coincidentally the A's. So we have a lot to offer him, and I'm going to be petty, a little bit of petty. A win over Lincoln Riley is never going to make me sad.
It's never going to make me sad. And I'm going to say this, and I don't know how a lot of people feel about this. Lincoln Riley lying to a recruit by telling him he was the one that pulled all the strings for Kyler Murray to play baseball at Oklahoma, and then finding out that Skip Johnson flipped that over on its head really quickly. That just couldn't have made me more happy because I was telling Jay this a while back, and I said, there's no recovery from that. Like, you can recover from the Oklahoma to USC move because you can tell people it's a job. I'm allowed to do this. I don't have to tell people I'm going to move ahead of time. But when you tell a recruit one thing and then it's clearly the other thing on the other side, there's just no recovery there. And so I will always take a win over Lincoln Riley. And there's many more to come for Oklahoma over USC in the coming months, maybe over the next couple of years.
Definitely so. And I guess my thought is like in this world where you can't get away with anything, why would you say that and not expect like Skip to be like, well, hold on a second, I feel like I got some receipts in my email box and my text message, So plus, I'm guessing that somebody reached out to Kyler. So, but again, it's going to be great. And once again, I'll repeat. having the number one running back in some people's eyes, composite 5-star, that's great. We need guys who are going to come in weapons all over the field moving into the SEC next year.
Yep, and I agree with Dominic here. He screwed up by telling them they're BS, but Robert has a good point here. Taylor Tatum is committing, I think it's at 11 a.m. So it's going to be 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's clearly a win for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Because if he's going to commit to USC, I mean, it would be later in the day so that USC could be a part of that commitment. He's not going to make them get all up at 9 a.m. to attend his commitment. So
No.
that's obviously good news for Oklahoma there.
I mean, they're USC fans anyway. I mean, it's hard enough to get them to pay attention at 7 p.m., much less 9 a.m. So it's good. When I saw that, I was like,
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if Lincoln Riley can get USC fans to actually care about USC football once again. I think just LA has become so enamored in their major league sports. It's going to be hard for USC, I think, to really take a foothold over the Rams and the Chargers and teams like that. Who, hey, the Chargers potentially, maybe one day could make it to a Super Bowl if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, but I just don't see that happening because the Chiefs are just so good. But the Chargers, they're an attraction out there, and I think that's going to take away from USC's fan base and USC getting fans out to the field, which I think ultimately over the next couple of years could hurt USC on the recruiting trail. If you can't pack your stadium, night in and night out when you're supposedly a blue blood program still across the country, how is that going to look for recruits? Like, recruits care about packing the stadiums. They really do. Every time we talk to one, they talk about how cool it is to walk into a stadium that's packed and loud, where the fans really care. And in LA, it's just a little bit harder to do that.
And I'll, Hank, first of all, no, you mean Tebow has honesty issues. I won't touch that one, but we're starting to hear it, with Jackson the other day, JJ, he was talking about how like he's excited to go in and play in front of these massive crowds in the SEC every year. And so it's a little tough. And, I don't know if Lincoln Riley ever sees this, but check back with me next year and see if Lincoln Riley's not coaching in LA, but it's not for the USC, because I promise you that if old boy the Chargers gets the axe, they're coming for him. And heck, Arizona may take another shot at that tree.
Chargers or the Rams.
Or the Rams. Yeah. McVay is going to look at the dog heap that he has, and they're going to be like, yeah, they were trying to get rid of Matt Stafford, but this is an OU podcast, so I'll get off the NFL.
Hey, you know what? I'm here for the NFL talk, but if we're going to talk NFL, we got to talk the best team in the league, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. My Chiefs. But sadly, being a Chiefs fan also comes with being a Royals fan, and we have not done anything in baseball in years. So it's sad on one part, good on the other. But a lot of you guys are chiming in here. Listen, I think Lincoln Riley, yes. I'm not going to say he's got huge character issues. I don't say lying was the right word for leaving Oklahoma, because when he stand up on the podium and he said, I am not going to LSU, that technically was not lying. The man did not go to LSU. He just didn't tell us that there was another school in the play, but that's not lying because nobody asked the question. So, but we'll have to see kind of just how this affects recruiting for USC and Lincoln Riley going into the future. I'm under the impression that after Caleb Williams, we really have to see what Lincoln Riley's made of, because you know what? If he goes out there and he's not able to turn over any more Heisman winners or any more top, first round draft picks, is he really going to be the quarterback whisperer? If Jeff Lebby wins a Heisman, or one with one of his guys, if Josh Heupel does it with Nico out in Tennessee, I think you could start to see that narrative shift a little bit from Lincoln Riley just being this all great quarterback whisperer to, hey, you could really just go play for a good offense or for a good team in general and still have just as good of a shot as anybody else. So,
yeah. I agree with that. And, Malachi Nelson, he was going to be coming here. One of my major concerns with Malachi was he had, 5 D1 receivers, in his tenure there. They have a lot of talent, and that will make your high school team really, really good. So Yeah, and again, hiding your truth is just I mean, if you have a poker face on it, like he got away with it. And kind of like my ex-wife, I'm kind of over the hate just in general, but I don't mind a chuckle every once in a while.
None of us do. But kind of shifting gears from Taylor Tatum and the running back position, Oklahoma has big news coming down the recruiting trail last night, and that is the 3-star offensive lineman Eugene Brooks announced his commitment date is going to be July 25th, and it's going to be a Red River rivalry recruiting battle. And Oklahoma and Texas are in the thick of it here. All the predictions are flown in for Eugene Brooks. And I get it. It's not a 4-star, not a 5-star offensive lineman. A lot of people are forgetting the work that Bill Bedenbaugh has done with 3-star offensive linemen in the past. And I believe Orlando Brown was a 3-star guy out of high school, if I remember correctly. So just because they're a 3-star guy doesn't mean they can't play. And I just want you to notice the offers from some of these other 3-star and 4-star kids that Oklahoma's going after. If they've got Alabama and the Georgias and all those teams in there, you should feel just as good of your staff going after those players, because that means they're talented enough to play for those teams. So what are your feelings? What are your thoughts around Eugene Brooks? Do you think he ultimately ends up a Sooner, which is kind of where all the predictions are going?
I mean, one of my favorite offensive linemen, and I'm going to drop a name that not a lot of people, remember, but when I say it, you'll be like, "Oh my gosh!" But Chris Chester. Chris Chester came in as a tight end, and granted, not under Bedenbaugh, but same thing, like you said, with Jamal Brown, or Orlando Brown. But we've got a guy in Bedenbaugh that he is going to get bodies. And this is, I believe he's 6'3", 320. You look at the offer list and you look at some of the guys that he's going out. Yeah, listen, we talked about it in the foursome the other night. The O-line regionally, just the recruiting field in 24, just wasn't stellar. And again, we've talked about this, the 25 offensive linemen that we're on right now, and in some cases in the lead for, we've got guys who are going to be amazing. But with Eugene Brooks, I personally think that it was somewhat of a setup, that it was between us and Texas, because I think it's just another shot at Texas. I really do. There's a reason why he only has 2. And so I'm here for it. But again, 6'3", 320, you get him in with some Schmitty. And, I'm selfishly wishing that Guyton has a good year, but not like first round, so that he can lead us into the SEC. But that's probably not going to happen. So we're going to have a lot of athletes out there. I believe in this offensive line. And it's not going to help that, I guess it's not going to hurt that when we throw in with Jackson Arnold first year in the SEC, we need some bodies. We're going to have a little bit more size at the quarterback position. And I'm guessing just, outside of Caleb Williams, we haven't had a ton of size back there, but I like Eugene Brooks, interior lineman. He's strong. You hear about the violent hands, but it's the size. We don't have to get somebody in here and hope to God that we can get him up to 300 pounds, like we've had with other recruits. So this will be another big win, and I think that we've got a couple more coming through. And so we're going to get guys in the line that Bedenbaugh can come in and say, listen, I want that flexibility. I want that variety in your game, to where like you can play maybe a little center, maybe a little left guard, right guard. And, if we have to swing you out to the tackle, it looks like he's got a body for it.
Yes. And, I think a lot of people have looked at the offensive line class here in 2024, and they've kind of freaked out a little bit, because a guy like Casey Poe, who's been on the podcast 2 or 3 times, one that we thought really was going to be an Oklahoma lean, Alabama just came in really strong right towards the end and really was able to make that pitch and that sell of, hey, come play for a second Alabama great and a coach of Nick Saban, where I think it was his grandfather ended up playing for Bear Bryant. So, I mean, how many opportunities like that do you get? But, so you lose out on him. You lose out on a couple other guys. Doesn't look like Bennett Warren's going to get here. But I want people to understand how hard it is to recruit two in just any position where you're probably not going to get to really have a good chance of starting for 2 or 3 years. Reason being is, yes, Oklahoma has definitely 4 guys on the offensive line that are leaving the program after this season. Maybe 5 if Tyler Guyton has a good enough season to go to the league and potentially be a top. I would say he needs to be graded in the first 3 rounds for it to really be worth his while. Otherwise, just take the NIL money, stay at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But you've got an offensive line that could be returning of Troy Everett, who just did things in Appalachian State. I mean, watch that game against Texas A&M. Aaron
Definitely.
Parks can be returning. You've got Gunnar Allen. You've got Savion Byrd, who there's a lot of high hopes for him. You've got Kenneth Wormy. That was a preferred walk-on here from Cache, Oklahoma, that a lot of people are excited for, because when you bring in that in-state talent, even at a preferred walk-on, that allows you to be able to create competition in that locker room. So you look up and down the boards, Josh Bates, Ty Kubicek, CJ Compton. You've got Nate Anderson. You've got Caden Green, Logan Hallen, Hito Zaida. Oklahoma is, I feel like, deep and young talent there. And so it's going to be hard to recruit guys in this class to say, hey, you might have to wait a couple years before you can be a starter. 2025 is going to be the year. We've said it. We've pointed to it. There's a huge pipeline for Oklahoma down at Bishop Gorman. You've got the guys out of Texas. Ty Hayward, a guy out of Denton. Ryan, I believe it's Denton Ryan, 4-star offensive lineman. He will be up here at Oklahoma. So I like Oklahoma for Eugene Brooks. And you know what? If all we get at this point is Josh Isosa, which I expect us to land him, and the kid out at the NFL Academy, I think we will be just okay at the offensive line. But yes, it's going to be great to get the early win over Texas in the Red River rivalry, especially on the recruiting trail, because they took Devin Jordan from us in 2022 and or Campbell, and that was one I think we all expected Oklahoma to get before they came in late with that NIL money. So
and there's some whispers right now that also Grant Brooks is still a little more pro OU. That one, I'm not ready to shoot my shot yet, but I'm starting to feel better, because a couple weeks ago I wasn't feeling too good about it.
Yeah, so Grant Brooks, like, I would like to add him in, but I'm not going to add him in as a guarantee just yet, just because I know K-State and Nebraska are going to make their push. Nebraska's probably the best team or hardest team to be able to beat out there. And if you land him, it's just candy on the cake. Grant Brooks, I know, let's see here. I just saw it up here. Will Eugene Brooks be in rotation his freshman year? I definitely think he'll be in rotation. He won't be a starter. But Grant Brooks is a guy that could come in and take somebody's job. He's just that good.
Yeah, and I mean, you still have Jacob Sexton, who is going to be coming back from the ACL. And again, I mentioned being a Broncos fan, but like, I hear ACL and I still think Terrell Davis, and how that can just take people out. But guy was moving around and doing stuff in the spring, and he was a starter. He was a starter for the bowl game. So look to him. Jake Taylor still has a lot of that flexibility too. So, but yeah. Mr. Everett, do not forget about that guy. Just because he played at Appy State does not mean anything, because he went up against all those 5-star defensive linemen in that Texas A&M game, and he more than held his own in there.
Yeah, against a really good defensive line. I mean, you guys look at what Texas A&M has been doing out there on that defensive line. I mean, they've put in defensive line Garrett, who have just been straight monsters. So Troy Everett, I think, will be a great key, especially since we've kind of heard up and down things about Joshua Bates. This just allows there to be a little bit more competition in that room, maybe make Andrew Rame a little bit better this year, and then it gives you depth at the center position, which I don't think you've had since Creed Humphrey's been here.
Yeah, and again, you still have you have guys like Robert Conjal, who that guy just all he is a Band-Aid. He comes in and he fills in places, and so we need a couple of those guys on the offensive line. Some guys who are going to come in, and maybe Aaron Parks. Aaron Parks came in and after Sexton went out and did pretty good in the bowl game. I mean, he had some wins. Don't sleep on Caden Green. I mean, this is the highest. He was the highest rated offensive lineman that Bedenbaugh's got since he's been here. This guy is going to be a stud. And if you watch any of the Under Armour games or any of the Senior Bowls and stuff like that, like this guy was going up against a lot of really, really stud defensive linemen, and he was putting some dudes on his butt. So pretty good. And take that. I think he's going to be ready. I don't see where he isn't.
Yeah. And you know what? If he's not and he has to come in on a backup role, Oklahoma will still be fine. Because I just want you guys to know you're likely going to have Caleb Schaefer, Tyler Guyton, Andrew Rame, um, Walter Rouse. Like your offensive line, I think, is pretty well set with tenured guys, but there's going to be a heavy rotation. Like I really think Oklahoma is going to get in the habit of rotating these guys out, keeping legs fresh and keeping guys as healthy as possible, especially early in the season. I think you might see some of those tenured guys sit out a little bit more, and the younger guys come in and take up a little bit more halfway through the game and try to get some snaps in case they're needed later in the season. So best hidden gem in the recruiting class this season. There's a lot of them. If I pull up,
Are we talking about like currently in our in because I mean I think the NFL Academy offensive lineman, that guy could turn into something. Alabama went up there and they've been going after, and I his name escapes me and I feel terrible for this. But yeah, I mean that guy could turn into something. And who the heck would what would you like to do to take the Soul Mission and a couple of players over to like Germany or Europe, somewhere over there, and run a little camp for OU in Europe and just start a little pipeline from the Euros?
Yeah. I have his name here. It's Daniel Akanumi. Akanumi, I think is how his last name is said. And yeah, he's only been playing football for like a couple years. So there's a lot of upside there because he's fresh. And like you get him in a guy like around Bill Beatonbow, you let him sit for 2 years and really be developed. That guy could be an absolute monster by his junior and senior season. So yeah, I agree with that. If I look at guys that are committed in the class, though, that Oklahoma has that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, it's got to be a guy like maybe Isaiah Autry or even maybe an Ivan Carrion. Like I think we talk about some of these other wide receivers, but I don't think we talk about what Ivan Carrion could be for Oklahoma in terms of a tight end, because he's not quite fast enough to play wide receiver, but I think he's a little bit faster than most tight ends. So if you play him in that position, I think he has the ability to beat out some of those defenders, but also he's got the height to be able to go up there and grab the ball and be a weapon where Oklahoma's realistically got a lot of size coming in at the wide receiver position and size that they already have. So if you want to put a Dylan Gabriel out there in packages where you need to just kind of sling it up 30 or 40 yards down the field, you might have 3 or 4 guys that could just kind of jump up in the air and try to see who can come down with it. And Ivan Carrion could be one of those guys. And if he adds on just a little bit more speed, definitely going to be a dangerous player for the University of Oklahoma.
You sat and watched JP and Trav when they had Wyatt Gilmore on, and we're going to get a lot of very, very lauded, defensive linemen. Don't sleep on him coming in and then just, sitting in the shadows, getting his work done, coming in and doing stuff. That guy, he was so cool to talk to. And dude threw down the horns down. It was so awesome. But, he's talking about, playing football in the snow, and he just sounds like a guy. What did he say? Like, how much do you bench? And he was like, I think like 400 or something like that. Like he just threw it out there. Like, this kid's going into, his senior year. He's a little bit of a wrestler. So watch it. Watch a guy like him, because 6'4", 245, he probably can still do some growing. And he's going to be a guy to where, he's going to add some flexibility out there. But you just specialize in one or two things. You come in and you're a guy like him. And, when you remember those Clemson lines a few years ago, there were guys that you didn't even remember them playing for Clemson that were going to draft. I like Wyatt Gilmore. Maybe that's a little bit of a fandom pick. I love your carry-on one, because anytime that I can keep some big, tall dude who's just going to moss all of our defensive backs away from Tech, I'm all in, because I guess he would never play Tech. But yeah, 6'6". This isn't a Quentin Chaney. This isn't a guy like that. I said that he reminds me a little bit of like a Mark Andrews type. When Mark came in as a freshman or came in as a recruit, we were telling him he was playing wide receiver, and that was a big deal for him, was to get a shot there. I think Carrion is going to be a big over the middle red zone target, while we have nothing but speed everywhere else on the field.
Yes, no, and I like the Wyatt Gilmore one because out of all the defensive linemen, he'll probably go as the under the radar guy that a lot of people forget will be on this team. And really he was the first defensive lineman in this class. He's the guy to really get it started. So Jimmy Satterfield asks a question. What doesn't really ask a question, makes a statement. I hope we still get Braden Platt. And I'll say this right now, I think Braden Platt's Oregon. And that's just because I think Oregon's losing Justin Williams to the University of Georgia. I think that was really the reason why Georgia made a big push for what's his name? Joseph Jonah Ajonye, was because they kind of felt like there's been this idea for a while. Georgia's going to lose Dominic Riddick to either Auburn or Alabama. I think it's going to be Alabama. That's 5-star linebacker out of your class. And if you get a guy like Joseph Jonah Ajonye, well, why wouldn't you want him? He's a borderline 5-star defensive lineman. Yeah. And then you have all the chances in the world to go out there and land, his teammate and his friend, Justin Williams. And it seems like ever since Joseph Jonah Ajonye is committed to Georgia and really just been visiting Georgia over these past couple of months, Justin Williams, that idea with flirtation of going to Georgia has been a little bit there. So I think if he ends up at Georgia, Braden Platt, I think, becomes a top priority for Tosh Lupoi and the Oregon Ducks. Dan Lanning knows what he wants to do at Oregon, just like Brent Venables wants to know what he wants to do at Oklahoma. Both defensive-minded guys, and I think they both know the linebacker position is very important. But I don't think it's imperative for Oklahoma to get Braden Platt like it is for Oregon to get Braden Platt, because Oregon needs a little bit more depth there. Oklahoma's got a lot of young guys. I will say this, Heath Ozida actually knows Braden Platt pretty well and is really pushing to get him to OU. So we'll have to kind of see just how big of a play Heath can be. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah. So I'll say this is, if OU goes out and puts the what they're doing recruiting is somewhat unseen right now. And I'm very, very, very excited about everything that's going on. There is a lot that we can gain with going out and having massive success on the field and showing the arrow is definitely pointed up. I'm a big believer that we are going to have 5 games up front where our defense has a chance to really gain some confidence. If you remember the Adam Sandler quote where he says, we used to schedule Appalachian State and kick the living crap out of them. Like, we've got a lot of teams that we should just go out and handle pretty well, but more than likely, the defense gains some. We have some chance for flips. And I think that you, my friend, said that in one of our previous pods, that you got to watch out for a lot of flips from IMG. You got to watch out for a lot of flips for certain linebackers that potentially committed to Ohio State. And so, again, Platt's one that if we don't actually get, I want him. I definitely want him in the class. But if we don't, I think that we've got some other irons in the fire.
Yes, we have other lines in the fire. And I do agree with that. I think Oklahoma has a shot to be able to go out there and land other guys. And I think, with where Oklahoma's at with some of these guys on the recruiting trail, they can be a little bit more picky with what they have in this room. I mean, think about it. Venables turned over 80% of this roster in 2 years. And a lot of the guys that he has here are young. So in 2024 and 2025, you expect this team to, I think, really kind of be closer to its peak of what it can be, just because of the young guys that they have there. So if they can't get the guys they want this year, then they're going to turn their focus to, in 2025, guys like a Jonah Williams, who he's listed at safety, but probably could play the cheetah role in the way that you'll probably see Peyton Bowen or Reggie Pearson play it, where they can play on the linebacker position or drop back into coverage if they're needed to. So Jonah Williams is a guy that I think you could potentially look at for Oklahoma. I don't really favor them a whole lot there, but you never know. Anything could change, especially since he's a 2-sport athlete and wants to play baseball. It seems like Oklahoma's been doing a pretty good job there. But other guys you're really looking at next year that I think Oklahoma really wants: Kelvion Riggins, a guy that's been to Oklahoma a couple times; Christian Thatcher, who is actually out in the Las Vegas area, which is important because there's a couple offensive linemen you want from Vegas. Vegas could be a really big, bright spot for Oklahoma in 2025. And then you've also got Chase Purcell, who's taken a visit to Oklahoma as well and is out of Lee Summit North, along with Isaiah Mosey, Kamori Moore, and some of those guys. So a lot Oklahoma could be potentially doing next year at the linebacker position. And if all they get is James Nesta this year, I don't think they're freaking out.
And you look at the youth still. Like Stutzman is going to have just something silly this year to be a threat to leave to NFL. But with what we have behind him with McKenzie and Kanik, and then obviously guys coming in like my boy Lewis Carter, the Crimson Missile. These, we look good right now. So again, if we have a little bit on the light side this year, I don't feel like it's as bad as like the light year on the offensive line, but and I think somebody else put it up here. The Clemson linebacker that hit the portal. Again, if Brent wants him and he's a program fit, bring it on, because it's the program fit more than anything for me, because you see what's going on. You see some of the comments coming out of A&M. If we can get some linebacker depth out of the portal, guys that Brent recruited, I'll trust Brent.
Yeah, and I don't think TJ Dudley. I think he's a take, but I don't think there's a spot. I don't think there's room for him, unfortunately. But again, like you said, Oklahoma, I think Danny Stutzman will be here till his senior year. And then you've got the Lewis Carters, the Sammy Omasigos. I guess Phil Picchiotti had a really good offseason. You got Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis. A lot of people forget about this guy, Shane Witter, who, by the way, is lightning fast on the field. So if he could just stay healthy, that could be a really big piece for you at the linebacker position. Oklahoma's going to be fine, even if we lose Braden Platt, because 2025, they'll pick up 2 or 3 guys there, and they'll be right back in the mix of it. 2026, it'll probably be a lower class again. So we got a lot of people in here talking about defensive line recruiting. So it would not be a podcast, no you podcast, without talking about defensive line recruits. But we'll talk about Nigel Smith here, because I saw this one at the beginning. Future casted to OU, which isn't surprising at all. Heard he loves Oklahoma. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty well set in stone. Nigel Smith will be a Sooner, unless for some reason Larry Johnson comes in. Or maybe if you have 3 5-star defensive linemen committed by that time, maybe that impacts you. But also, Ohio State could have 3 5-star defensive linemen. So, I mean, there's a real possibility that Ohio State and Oklahoma put up the best defensive line classes this year. And so I think Oklahoma is in a really good position there. But he's not committing till the 2nd or 3rd week of September against the Royce City, which they moved up senior night just for him to have it there at their new stadium. So it's just one of those things we forget to talk about Nigel Smith sometimes, because he's so far away. It seems like September's just not there yet. It's just not there yet. But outside of that, defensive line, it's exciting. David Stone, Williams Nwaneri coming up. You've got Dominic McKinley.
And you know what, Nigel, there are some people in circles that say Nigel has already set his mind. And so whether that's OU or not, we don't know. Right. But you got to think that, like, just if you read the tea leaves, if you believe that there's any curiosity about Stone or anything like that, it would just surprise me beyond. It'd be the worst I've ever been wrong in recruiting if he ended up somewhere else. Williams Nwaneri, guys, this guy has so many ties to the program, and he is going to be something absolutely special. Now McKinley, his parents love it, and I think that everybody needs to watch the Party at the Palace. If McKinley shows up with his family, I think the writing's on the wall at that point, because there is just too much there. You're starting to hear a lot of stuff with LSU just not rubbing people the wrong way, and that's a hard thing to do. And I don't know what it is, because most of those people, those colors, they're what they grow up with. It doesn't matter where in Louisiana they're from, but they grow up with those colors, and that's part of who you are as a child growing up in Louisiana. I mean, think about it. For most of us here in Oklahoma. So you get this defensive line coming in. match it with Adibari from last year, and then you start pulling in Kamari Moore and stuff like that for next year. Guys, we're going to have to find a new position to really get jacked up about, because we haven't seen any of these types of things. These are guys that we see the OU logo show up in their final 10 or stuff like that, because it's kind of like, hey, listen, everybody likes me, but we're never the bride. And I think we're getting married quite a bit in the next 30 days.
Oh, we definitely are. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if McKinley comes to Party at the Palace and he's blown away, his parents are blown away once again. Does he still wait till January? Because, if you're McKinley and you could be in the same class as Williams Winery pretty quickly, I would assume Stone pretty quickly. I'm not sure. Who knows if Stone will ever commit? Seems like he's going to drag this out forever and a day. But I mean, you could really gain some momentum on the recruiting trail, not only for your position, but everywhere else, and really create yourself a squad going into the SEC. So I'm curious to see if McKinley can maybe try to flirt with the idea of maybe moving it. I don't know. But Nigel Smith, I agree with you. I think he's pretty much a lock at this point. And why did Nigel Smith drop in the 247 rankings? I mean, sometimes these players get an idea where they want to go, and they just kind of they stop going to camps, they stop doing things, and they just start falling. I mean, and it happens. I don't think there's anything to really worry about. You started to see guys like Joseph Jonah Ajonye, who had a strong junior year, go up in the recruiting cycle. You saw T.A. Cunningham fall. It's just how it goes. In 2025, you're going to see 5-star guys that are there drop to 4-star status, maybe even out of the top 100. It just happens as they start to add guys more in. Guys have strong years. You just see a lot of movement there. But you mentioned 2025 and Kamari Moore, who will be here for Sooners Under the Stars, and teammates with Winery, Isaiah Mosey, and those guys. I would expect he'll be an Oklahoma Sooner. You've got 4-star defensive lineman Ethan Utley, 3-star defensive lineman Xavier Uponu from Denton Guyer, who definitely has aspirations to play with some of his Denton Guyer teammates. And then you've got on the edge position 2 guys from Oklahoma, one that could be a 5-star and the other one that could be potentially a top 200 player in the country when it's all said and done. Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis, I'm not going to say they have it the easiest, but they've got a pretty easy path for recruiting if they can get a couple guys in this class over the next couple of years.
I mentioned it earlier about us going, and there were some stories coming out of the barbecue and just relationships that were being built between Tatum and Durham, the running backs. I think it's the same thing with these defensive linemen. They've got Bates has the track record, Brent Venables has the track record, and you sell these guys that, listen, you don't have to come in and absolutely destroy your body and play 60 plus plays a game or anything like that. Like, you can come in here and sit next to people and who are just as good as you, and really put the work in so that you can get your rest, you can extend your career. And that is that's a big selling point. You match that with an unofficial sole member of Gerald McCoy. I'm pretty sure that Tommy Harris gets leverage. Dusty Dvoracek, even though Sooner fans were a little harsh on him the other day. You've got a lot of guys, that you can point towards and say, listen, we just need them. And now that we're in the SEC, you're not going to have to, play 90 snaps a game. There's no Patrick Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield stuff happening every week. So these linemen can come in and it's going to stack it class after class after class. And we start seeing these things happen, and the sky's the limit. And I'm wondering if there's people who look back and go, oh my goodness, wish I would have really jumped on board at OU. And again, I would love for our class to go up against A&M and Vassic over at Texas at some point, and just to show out.
The question is, does Texas land Colin Simmons? Because if they land Colin Simmons, the defensive line battle between Oklahoma and Texas over the next couple of years could definitely be interesting.
It's going to be fun. And here's what I'm saying. I'll shoot one shot. Right when Missouri and A&M went over to the SEC, they had a lot of success, and that was Missouri and A&M. This is OU in Texas. And as much as I want to kick the living dog crap out of them, but I would like for OU in Texas to be up at the top of the standings, going into the SEC, just to prove a lot of people like, hey, listen, this isn't your finesse. And this isn't your finesse OU team or finesse Texas team from the early 2000s. So again, Texas is putting together some stuff. Culture's always been the problem at Texas. It's never been the recruiting. They win in June, July, August all the time.
Yeah, and I don't think I hear a lot of people compare the Missouri and A&M thing back when they went to the SEC, and I don't think it's going to be the same thing anymore.
Different game.
My only reason why I say that is because the SEC plays the style of ball everybody does now. When A&M and Missouri came in there, they were still playing NFL style football. It was just pound the rock. And, when A&M and Missouri brought these fast paced offenses in there, you saw the same thing what Oklahoma would do to people in the bowl games, right? They would get beat up in the Big 12, but as soon as they went out into a bowl game, played somebody else, they would look like they could play with anybody. And I think it's going to be a little different now. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. Tennessee plays just a fast-paced offense. Alabama now, they play well on both sides of the ball. Georgia, on the other hand, we'll have to see what they can do with Dylan Raiola. But hopefully, if Oklahoma can get their trenches fixed, I think that's probably the biggest question mark for Oklahoma. If they can get their situation fixed in the trenches, they'll go out there and they'll be a top-tier SEC team year in and year out, because they have no problem getting skill guys to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's going to be the same. And I agree with you. I just, you've got going into next year, what's going to be really neat, and I've brought this up a few times, is there's a lot of first-time quarterbacks that we're going to be facing next year. I talked about Alabama. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on at quarterback, and I'm not sure if they won't hit the drawing board again the next year. Ty Simpson, I think that he could be somebody, but I mean, I don't think that I see, what they've had with Tua or with Bryce Young. We're going to have some young shootouts, Nico versus Jackson. That's going to be happening next year. So we want that line of scrimmage on both sides to be set up. And like you said, I kind of trust in Lebby. If Lebby goes out and has a good year, we're back to wondering, who's going to be our offensive coordinator the following year, because people are going to come after him hard.
The question is, does Jeff Lebby take any job that's a head coaching job that's in the SEC? Well, I don't know. SEC jobs, I heard it today on the radio. I believe it was Teddy Lehman was talking about it. And it was SEC jobs are different. You get an SEC job and you only leave an SEC job, even if it's Vanderbilt, for a blue blood program or a top tier Power 5 program. You don't just leave SEC jobs for anything. So it's like, man, if he get an SEC job, would he leave Oklahoma for it? So I think it's just going to depend on what's out there. And, I definitely don't think he's leaving for a West Virginia or a place like that. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Jeff Lebby's here for the years to come. Dominic Gomez asked an interesting question in the chat earlier. Which true freshman will see the most playing time this year? And I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. Depending on how the offensive line looks, Caden Green potentially could be a starter by the end of the season.
I like that one. Everybody wants to say PJ. I think that with a 5-star lineman, if he's getting it, yes, he gets a lot. But I think one that I'm starting to hear a lot of good stuff out of is Jaquez Petaway. It's a position of need, and the guy's got wheels. If he's got wheels and hands, I see a lot of us spreading the fields out. If you watch the Zion Raggins, we'll have to get pronunciation on that one. But if you watch the Raggins huddle film, they run this deal to where it is a fake reverse where the inside receiver comes in right behind, stutter steps, goes right back out, and they fake a swing pass out to him. And then Raggins runs this post route and nobody's there. And I think that with the guys that we have, we've got a need for somebody to go deep. I think we're going to see a lot of passes with bubble screens around the line of scrimmage with some of the speed we have. If Petaway gets the most, I think we're all going to be happy, because that sets him up for a good career. And that means that he's doing well.
Yeah, and another guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, well, he was getting talked about a lot. It's Josiah Wagner. You heard
Yeah.
so many things earlier in the spring about how Josiah Wagner was, and sorry if you guys hear the dogs barking. Kately decided to come into the house, so she got home from work today, so working that 12-hour shift. But Josiah Wagner really has been showing out in the spring games or in the spring practices, and I think Josiah Wagner is a guy that, depending on if Keaton Lawrence and some of these other guys can step up, Josiah Wagner could be a guy that you could see potentially get some playing time. And then Phil Picciotti. I didn't expect to hear that many good things about him. I thought Phil Picciotti would have needed a year in the system with Schmitty and them, but seems like he's really progressing well. And it seems like this linebacker class for Oklahoma, all three of them could see the field if anybody in that linebacker room decides that they're going to slack off a little bit.
Yeah, and don't forget, like you've still got Makari Vickers. He's going to have something to say. If you watch the Under Armour game, Jacoby Johnson was actually one of the more impressive guys. And yeah, I saw somebody about Lewis Carter did the 350 6 times. So this is, he is a monster. And then again, you say this, you tell me how excited we were a while back that we were getting a 5-star safety, a 5-star freaking safety. And we're not even talking about the dude right now. Compared to Ed Reed.
I hear he's going to play cheetah. I hear he's going to play cheetah packages. Like he's that good and he's that fast.
And one that I heard is that has given a lot of people a lot of fits are Taylor Wine and Taylor Heim. Both of these guys are going to be on special teams, and they are just, this is a 6'5" guy and a 6'5" guy. Taylor Wine is 6'5", 245. So yeah, there's a lot of talk that he is making people, he's coming in a different world than anybody thought he was.
Yeah, and I would hate to be a radio announcer or a broadcast announcer with Taylor Wyman and Taylor Heim because, listen, they're going to get confused. And Dominic, you said it right. You mentioned Joe Wag and the dogs start barking. How fitting. Yeah, 100%.
Because he is a bulldog.
That was not planned, by the way. So even though I knew she was coming home, it was not planned. So, well, hey, as we start to get into the tail end of this, Keaton brought up one earlier that I thought was interesting because I talked about it last year, and Dillon Gabriel having just an incredible year. And really, he didn't have a bad year for his first year back from a clavicle injury, like a broken or fractured clavicle, whatever it is. Yeah. But he said, depending on DG going off for 4,000 plus total yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 picks, and decides to want to come back for another year, how does the staff entertain that? I don't think they do. I think they tell Dillon Gabriel, this is the best you're ever going to be. You need to take your stock while it's high.
Yeah, he's not growing.
No.
So no matter what he does, he's not growing. He's going to be a guy who's, and again, fairly say that I said that Jalen Hurts would probably not go in the first 5 rounds after the LSU game. So I have the capability of being dead wrong. But I just don't see him coming back. But with that being said, you don't bring in a 5-star Jackson Arnold and say, let's sit you on the shelf for a couple of years. Now, if Dillon Gabriel comes in and does those type of stats, I'm all for him. The guy loves Hawaii, and he could do a lot of stuff with Hawaii football if he doesn't go to the NFL. So he is a good man, and he is a great credit to our program. And this is not a Spencer Rattler getting booed off the field thing.
Seems like everybody's a big fan of Lewis Carter on the special team, just taking people's heads off. And I'm not going to lie, Lewis Carter and what he has been able to bench is impressive because I can only bench 245s, one on each side. So anybody that can bench more than me is just impressive. And
I'll say this, Eric Stryker, that's a good one. But Hank, what about Ronell Lewis? If you remember Ronell Lewis early, that's a small town Oklahoma guy. And if memory serves me right, I think that when he was on special teams, he was damn near killing people. So yeah, I'll take Ronell Lewis instead of that.
Hey, and Lewis Carter was a great eval by the staff, a guy that was wanted by so many guys across the country, Georgia and everybody else. I definitely like Lewis Carter. Davis Bevel to tight end. I think that was an April Fool's joke.
That was April Fool's, yeah.
However, though, I really could see this happening next season.
Hey, all I got to say is Davis Bevel, he may not have any game on the field, but did you see who he's dating?
Oh my gosh, that the pitcher,
Stracco,
Storako,
Alexis
yeah.
Stracco, yeah. So at least he's got that going for him.
Yes, at least he's got that going for him. So, well, hey, final topic of the day. Let's wrap it up. And it's not necessarily football, but Topher brought this up, and it is a big win for the Porter Moser basketball program, landing Dalton Forsyth, who, if you guys don't pay attention to basketball recruiting, and I'm not going to lie, I've flirted with the idea of starting a college basketball podcast once a month talking about it, but we'll have to kind of get what you guys are feeling there. Out of McLeod, Oklahoma, 3-star combo guard, 222nd ranked player in the 247 composite. Big win for Oklahoma, keeping him here in state, but also getting him to Norman, not letting him go to Stillwater. This is things that Oklahoma's got to be able to do to get back to the top and get back to potentially competing for Final Four appearances in the basketball world. You have any thoughts around what Porter Moser's been doing? And I mean, this pickup for him?
If you have endured OU basketball for the past 2 years, and I do emphasize endured, it has been a massive, massive absence of athleticism and shooting. And some things are changing. OU is not going to be bad, but again, this is it's a good win. And I mean, I'm just going to say, Porter Moser, he was. There were some people who wanted him to maybe take that Notre Dame job this past year, and so I don't think that we're going to be in the top 2 or 3 in the Big 12. It's just a tough league, but I'd like to at least go out with a competitive team and a final tournament appearance, because again, I think that we get a little bit easier next year in the SEC from the basketball team, but I want to win. But anytime that you can keep this guy, because I was tired of watching, small town guys go to Oklahoma State and, light us up for 20 in Bedlam.
Totally muted here because the dogs are barking. Jimmy Satterfield says it here. A 3-star guard is not going to get you there. Here's my thoughts on this. Same thing with the football program. You can't keep your guys that are in state, that are guys that are wanted by multiple teams all over the country, then you're never going to have a chance to compete for national championships. And that's just the sad, honest truth. You have to be able to get the guys in your state. OU in football, they can't continue to lose out on the Zadavian Sims or the Danny Okoyes. Maybe this year they can afford it because at that position it's just so deep. But in the next coming years, you can't. And the reason why that is, you get guys that are in state that have grown up watching these teams, understand the history and the tradition. It provides competition, and it provides this pride of playing for your team and makes everybody better. So yeah, a 3-star guard doesn't get you to your goal, doesn't get you to where you want to be, but it makes your team better, and it starts getting you to the point where, okay, if guys in the state are interested, eventually guys that are outside of the state will become interested.
And he had just gotten offered by Villanova, and last time I checked, that they've won 2 national championships in the past couple of years. So I'll take that. Again, 6'2" white guy. Nobody is going to be super jacked, especially at a 3-star. But again, we've seen a lot of guys, light it up against us, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that anymore.
Yes, for sure. So, all right. Well, we've been on here almost an hour, and the wife got home, so I'm going to have to make her dinner. But, Cooper, where can they find you at? Where can they hear all of your great football takes?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to be doing some more solo stuff here soon, but you can check me on Unfair Sports with Jay. So if you guys are on there, check us out. I like to join in with all you guys. I'm newer into this, so PG, I appreciate you letting me in on here, and I always appreciate the chat. You guys always come in here. It matters. If it was dead silent, it's a lot harder, and it makes it a lot tougher to do.
Yes, for sure. All right. And guys, I appreciate you tuning in. There were over 200 and something of you guys at one point. So appreciate you guys jumping in, being active in the comments. We're going to start doing this a lot more. I know I've kind of been bad about live streams, but we're going to start live streaming a lot more, especially as now that the wedding and stuff is over. It's free time about to free up for me. So, but guys, until next time, we will see you later. Now we get this.